Comic Boom.
Hey guys, Comic Boom here to review the Harley Quinn movie, Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. When I went to the theater to watch this movie, I had to buy the popcorn in the Harley Quinn Hammer, of course. I had to get the pop in the Harley Quinn, in the Birds of Prey cup, obviously. I got some things on display here. I got the DC Comics version of the Huntress with her crossbow here, and Black Canary with her canary cry, and I got the Goodnight Bat behind me there, up there in between Selena Kyle's breasts. Let me tell you something. There is more sexuality in my display here than there is in this movie. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Let me cut to the chase. I like this movie. I recommend people go see this movie. I want to see this movie twice. This movie had laugh out loud moments for me. I enjoyed this. I was surprised how much I enjoyed this. Those of you who do watch my videos, you know that I've made some comments in the past. I was in New York City Comic Con with Dark Knight Nation, and we were there. We were even there when Margot Robbie showed up with the cast to promote the movie. Never really got a good look at him, but because it was very crowded. But we were there, and we saw the fashion on displays of Harley Quinn's outfits and the costume designs for the Huntress, for Black Canary, for Harley Quinn, and for Cassandra Cain. And yeah, there was a huge promotion for Harley Quinn at New York City Comic Con in this past October of 2019, and there was a big promo for the Harley Quinn cartoon. So, but nonetheless, I was concerned, and straight up, because of my bias, I had some biases. My biases for the comic book version of Harley Quinn, and I like the sexuality of Harley Quinn. I'm a Purian fanboy at heart. I expected and wanted a little bit of TNA in this movie. You know, a lot like what they had in Suicide Squad. I had certain expectations, and I really didn't think that they were going to be met, to be very honest with you. I was very cynical going into this movie. I thought the previews were not very good, and I had concerns. Well, straight up, I give this movie a 6.5 out of 10 for a number of reasons. I enjoyed the first two acts, all right? This movie does a lot of things right. The action sequences were actually quite good. I thought they were quite good for the first two acts. The third act, it fell apart. I thought the third act, if the third act would have been as well scripted and as well as choreographed as well as the first two acts, I think this movie would have come together better, quite frankly. But overall, I gotta say, I was impressed, and it had some laugh out loud moments. Now, here's where this movie is maybe going to upset, some people and it's really more in the category of, it depends on which incarnation of Harley Quinn you're really passionate about, because there's so many incarnations of Harley Quinn. Because let me tell you something, you could take I don't know what the word woke means, but you could take a woke person, or you could take a person of any sexuality, a trans person, a lesbian, a bisexual, a Purian fanboy male like myself, and we all love Harley Quinn. That's one thing we all have in common. We love Harley Quinn. Well, you take all those different people with all those different sensibilities, with all those different expectations, and because Harley Quinn is a sexualized character. She's sexualized even in the Batman animated cartoon. If you like the Batman animated style, she's sexualized. If you like the Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti version of the New 52, that really put her on the map in the comic books, really, you're really gonna love this movie because it's very beholden to that interpretation. If you like the interpretation of Harley where she's a little bit more, has more of a psychosis and is more deeply disturbed, there's her actual original comic book run where she was displayed and written in a much more psychopathic way. And if you believe in a Harley that is on the Suicide Squad, like in the movie, she was sexualized more in the Suicide Squad movie. And a little bit more came across as, I would say, more for the male gaze in the Suicide Squad movie than than she is portrayed here in Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Now, talking about the title, there's been some talk about the title, controversial title. It's a very long title, Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. The plot here, the title fits the movie very well. I think it's actually a good title for it. This movie takes place right after Suicide Squad, and Harley Quinn breaks up with the Joker, or more specifically, I guess you could say, well, I guess the Joker never really broke up with her, but she breaks up with the Joker. She comes to realize that she's beholden to the Joker in too many ways, and too much of who she is as a person is beholden to the Joker. And so she breaks up with the Joker symbolically by running a semi-trailer and semi-truck into Ace Chemicals, with Ace Chemicals being where her and the Joker, I guess that was their bonding moment, where Joker threw her into the pit of chemicals that changed Harley's skin white like his. And anyways, symbolically, that was her way of breaking up with him, was by blowing up Ace Chemicals. That caused a problem because now what's established in this movie is that everybody actually hates Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn made a lot of enemies as the Joker's girlfriend. And so now once she doesn't have the protection of the Joker because she so publicly broke up with him in this movie, everybody wants Harley dead. And so everybody wants a piece of Harley. And this is where the movie in the first two acts really surprised me at how well this was done. And I got to give credit here to the writer, Christina Hodson is the writer. Had some very fresh ideas here that worked rather well. Again, I think the script could be better in the third act of the movie, but for the first two acts, I thought it was very well. And director Kathy Yan, I think did a fairly good job here. There was some the ingenuity that was used in conveying every time that Harley was attacked by a new person who wanted her dead. They would display on the screen what the person's name was, and then the grievance. It would have a grievance. What was this person's grievance with Harley Quinn? And it was done in a neon light and in a very psychotic neon light kind of way, and it just worked for the craziness of the movie, and it really fit the tone of the character that Margot Robbie does an excellent job conveying for Harley Quinn. It really worked. And so the first two acts, there were some laugh out moments here that really that were just great. Now, the villain of Black Mask, played by Ewan McGregor, he never really liked Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn actually broke the legs of his driver in his nightclub, and Black Mask is a psychotic criminal to begin with, but he never took any move against Harley Quinn because she was the Joker's girlfriend, and he didn't need the headache of killing the Joker's girlfriend. But he always hated her, and he always wanted her dead to begin with. That's fairly clearly established. And so when he hears that she's no longer Joker's girlfriend, he basically wants to round her up, and he wants to kill her. But meanwhile, what happens is that there is the Bertinelli diamond, and this is where the Huntress comes into play. And the Huntress, of course, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She does a good job playing the Huntress. Her family, she is Helena Bertinelli in the movie, just like in the comic books. Same name. She's from the Bertinelli crime family. The Bertinelli crime family, they had a diamond, the Bertinelli diamond. They were wiped out by a rival mafia family, and Black Mask has the diamond, and it ends up being stolen through a series of events. The Victor Zsasz, who's played by Chris Messina, he ends up with the diamond, but he gets pickpocketed by Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain, who is nothing like the comic book version of the character, is just basically a pickpocket. And anyway, she ends up with the diamond, and through a precarious series of events, all these characters of the Huntress, who is hunting down various members of the crime family that destroyed that killed her family, that becomes linked to the Black Mask's mafia. Black Canary in the movie, who's played by Journey Smollett-Bell, does an excellent job, is actually my favorite Birds of Prey. She actually is the singer in the nightclub owned by Black Mask, but she's a very strong female character in this movie. She ends up wanting to help Cassandra Cain. The Huntress gets involved through her machinations in meeting the Birds of Prey. Meanwhile, Harley Quinn herself wants to protect Cassandra Cain, and so they come together. Ultimately, they all end up in their own ways making enemies of the Black Mask, and the Black Mask, by the time we get to the third act, the Black Mask wants all of the Birds of Prey dead. He wants Harley dead, Huntress dead, he wants Black Canary dead, and he wants Cassandra Cain, because Cassandra Cain ends up with the diamond, and she's swallowing the diamond. She swallows the diamond, and so that's really the craziness of the movie. And the first two acts, it's very zany and a little up and down the first two acts, but I followed it and I thought it was really funny because it's Harley Quinn narrating narrating what has happened in much the same way as Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner do in their epic Harley Quinn run. So if you're big fans of Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner's comic book run, you're going to enjoy this movie. You're going to enjoy it. I can't see how you don't enjoy it, because there's so many Easter eggs in here, from Harley's pet beaver to her pet hyena, to her fascination and her love of food. There's her love of a breakfast sandwich that comes into play at the beginning of the movie and is juxtaposed against an ending at the end of the movie. All these things are directly from the comic book. So if you're a DC comic book fan like myself and you're beholden and you love Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner's interpretation of Harley in that new 52 run, I don't see how you could not like this movie. Now, the action in the first two sets, the action in this movie is surprisingly good. I would say it's, at a minimum, it's good. It falls apart in the third act, I think. And I'll explain why I think it did. But the first two acts, you could tell that there was a very good fight choreographer that played a role in this movie, that influenced this movie. My understanding is the same choreographer who did John Wick helped out with this movie. Let me be absolutely clear, none of the fight scenes compare to John Wick, all right? But some of them are pretty cool. There's a scene here where Harley does something with a baseball bat that I've never seen done in a movie. And it's nothing obscene, but the way she creatively uses the baseball bat, especially in one scene where she bounces it off the ground and it hits the guy and it flips back toward her and she catches it. That was awesome. That was probably one of the best scenes I saw, that Harley Quinn using that bat. And she wasn't using the Goodnight bat, which is in the background here between Selena Kyle's breasts. But ironically enough, by the end of the movie, the Goodnight bat is actually used by Black Canary. But in any event, the fight scenes were creative. There was a creativity to some of the fight scenes at the first two acts of this movie that I thought was pretty good. There was a scene where Harley Quinn goes into a police station to get Cassandra Cain out because she wants to protect Cassandra Cain, and she knows that Cassandra Cain's life's in danger because she had pickpocketed the Bertinelli diamond. And as she's going through the police station, it's interesting, Harley Quinn utilizes, she doesn't use lethal force. There's surprisingly, Harley Quinn doesn't kill police officers in this movie. She's not a killer, really. She's not. She comes across as a sweet, innocent psychopath, which is exactly what it is. Again, very akin to the Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda interpretation. This is not a dark Harley. In fact, this Harley in this movie is not as dark as the Harley in Suicide Squad. In fact, not only, I would argue, I felt that this Harley in Birds of Prey was not only less violent than the Harley that I saw in Suicide Squad, but she was also less sexualized. Because I remember in Suicide Squad that there were scenes where Harley Quinn would bend over. Remember that scene in Suicide Squad where she broke the display glass to steal a purse, and she bent over, and the focus wasn't on the purse, it was focused on her ass. Or there was that scene in Suicide Squad where they actually used special effects to make her ass look tighter and have her panties right up her butt. Harley Quinn was more sexualized in Suicide Squad, and even her outfit was, I would argue, more sexualized and more sexual in Suicide Squad than any of the fashion that Harley wears in this movie. Now, to be clear, I am a Period fanboy. That's my bias, all right? So I love TNA. Okay, that's my bias, and I respect those who, if you're someone that wants a little bit, if you want a movie that's more through the female gaze than the male gaze, this movie is probably for you. I didn't mind it. There was no nudity in this movie. I don't know why this movie was rated R. I didn't find the violence that over the top. There was a couple of scenes where Harley Quinn broke some kneecaps with a baseball bat rather viciously. You could hear the crack. She broke another guy's legs rather viciously. You could hear the crack. But not a lot of blood. Victor Sass did cut off some faces, but they never really showed it. You could kind of hear it, but you never really showed it. This movie in Canada is rated 14T. It's not rated R in Canada. This is a movie that must have just been on the edge and to qualify for R rating in the United States, which leads me to one of my to a point that this movie should not have been rated R. They should have just taken out the scenes in the movie that made it R, because it didn't need it. It didn't need it. This movie did not feel like an R-rated movie. It did not have the language of an R-rated movie in my mind. I never got a sense that there was a lot of swearing. There wasn't an over amount of vulgarity, and there wasn't an over amount of violence to justify an R-rated movie. If this qualifies as an R-rated movie, they really need to overhaul the rating system in the United States and get one more like Canada. Because in Canada, this was a 14-2 movie, and I never went to this movie. I would have no problem sending a teenager in to watch this movie. And I'm not the only Canadian feels that way, because our rating rates us a 14-teen. But in any event, I want to go back to my point about the fashion, because the fashion here is there's no overt nudity in this movie. There's you don't see any breasts in this movie, like no breasts. You don't even see the nipples in this movie, and you don't see any real ass in this movie. There's no accentuation of any of those things in this movie. Now, I'm saying that because Harley Quinn is a character where I expected that. I did have that expectation. I thought that there was going to be more sexuality in this movie. I thought there was going to be more, there was going to be a little bit more TNA. Straight up, I thought that. That was my bias. That was my expectation. I also thought that there was going to be more of a sexual expression in this movie. I thought there would be an expression of Harley Quinn's, or at least a hint at Harley Quinn's bisexuality. I thought there would maybe be a hint of Poison Ivy showing up. There's none of that. Even Rosie Perez, who plays Renee Montoya, who is a lesbian in the comic books, there's a hint that she's a lesbian in this movie. But it's very, very subtle, and if you blink, you'll probably miss it. Again, not a big deal. Even the Huntress, who again is played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, the Huntress is surprisingly asexual. She's really more angry and subdued a character, very unlike the Huntress in the comic books. The Huntress in the comic books is well known for probably being one of the most promiscuous superheroines in the DC universe. In fact, there's even a scene in there's even a well established comic book story written by Gail Simone where the Huntress actually sleeps with a teenager who he insists he wants to go on a date with the Huntress because she needs some information. He's kind of an innocent kid. He's a high school kid, and he just loves the Huntress, and he wants the Huntress to go on a date with him, and otherwise she won't get the information. In any event, it's strongly implied in that comic story written by Gail Simone, of Woman in Refrigerators fame, that she actually sleeps with the teenager. It was done in an innocent and nice way. I frankly would have loved a scene like that in this movie where the Huntress was a little bit more sexual. I mean, Elizabeth, the actress, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, she's a beautiful actress. She's an attractive actress, but I thought her beauty was minimized in this movie through very poor fashion. We know what the Huntress looks like in the comic books, and she's got the crossbow. In the movie here, the Huntress is known as the crossbow killer, the crossbow hunter, or crossbow killer, and there's an inside joke that runs throughout the movie about what her name is, and it's I am the Huntress, but people are calling her the crossbow hunter. They're not calling her the Huntress, even though the Huntress, admittedly, even by Harley Quinn, the girls admit at the end of the movie that the Huntress is a real cool name. But in any event, her costume, the Huntress's costume in this movie is, I don't think it does justice to the character. It really desexualizes the Huntress in a way that really surprised me. I would have, because you could have given her a better costume than one she had, and still not show, because clearly they really didn't show any breasts in this movie or ass to begin with. So if you want to minimize the female sexuality in this movie, which is really what this movie did compared to other movies, it straight up did. And again, I love the movie. I'm going to go see it a second time. I get it. I get it. This is a movie that's through the female gaze, okay? This isn't like a woke movie, okay? Nothing's shoved down your throat, so relax, okay? As I put on Twitter here, this movie's not going to make you change your vote in November of 2020 if you're an American, okay? Relax, okay? It's not a woke movie. It's a movie where a bunch of women, a girl gang gets together and kicks ass, and it's funny and has its funny moments. Can you criticize this movie? Yes. The script, it falls apart in the third act, that it could be better, and this movie is average. This isn't going to make anybody's top 10 list for superhero movies, okay? But it's a fun movie, and it's worth seeing. But I do find it interesting that the fashion choices made were I thought questionable, except for Black Canary. I got to give compliments here to my favorite character in the movie by far, and I Mary Elizabeth, or pardon me, it's Journey Smollett Bell, who plays Black Canary. I understand she used to be on some, I forget what show she used to be on. Anyways, it's unimportant. She does an amazing job, and Black Canary actually looks genuinely sexy. Is the most sexy character, and done in a very classy way. She's got a. I love her costume. She's beautiful. She exudes her own kind of sensuality as opposed to sexuality, and she's powerful. She's a powerful character who can kick butt, and she looks beautiful and she's sexy, and and Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn here. Harley Quinn comes across, her costume is demonstrably different than it was in Suicide Squad, but she pulls off some strong sex appeal as well. Don't get me wrong. It's just it was interesting to me the difference that a female director makes in how this movie is viewed and the way in which the female characters come across. That's not a bad thing. But it is different, and I think it's an interesting analysis that I think it's an interesting debate that people can talk about in terms of when you film a movie through the female gaze versus the male gaze, how different the movie can come across, and it is what it is. Like I say, I still enjoyed this movie. So for guys that are looking for fantasies of female superheroes, I mean, this movie will have some ammunition for you. So relax. It's still, it might not be exactly what you're expecting, but this is still a sexy kick butt movie. Now, having said that, I've said before, I don't think this movie should be rated R, because I don't think it had that level of violence or nudity. And the reason why I felt that the movie fell apart in the second act was it was really fun watching how all these characters came together and how the story was told in different through flashbacks and through Harley Quinn's narration, and it was a lot of fun, and it's a funny movie. But by the third act, when everyone's together in the third act, it got a little bit surprisingly cliche. They end up in a carnival, in a top floor of a carnival house, surrounded by Black Mask's men and gangs and mafia, and nonsensically, they send in the gangs with no guns. And that leads to this the fight scene didn't look very good. They were fighting in a carnival house, and it really didn't work. And probably there was a cringe-inducing moment where Harley Quinn comes out in roller skates, which didn't work. It didn't work. And unfortunately, coming out in roller skates, not only did it look so ridiculous, but there was a comment made by Harley Quinn in the movie that when Harley Quinn suddenly comes out in roller skates that incidentally match her gold pants. So she has matching roller skates. This is absurd. I mean, I know it's a Harley Quinn movie, but it just didn't work. She comes out in gold roller skates, and Black Canary even made the comment, where did Harley Quinn get the roller skates, or something to that effect. And so they tried to cover it up by sort of playing with the obvious craziness of the moment and how the absurdity of the moment. But I don't think it quite worked. But you really have to buy into that, because Harley Quinn in roller skates, she's in roller skates for the second half of the third act. Because she ends up in roller skates being pulled by the Huntress on her motorcycle as they're chasing Black Mask in a vehicle. So her being on roller skates is somewhat crucial to the latter half of the third act. But it did feel forced, but it is what it is. It was okay, but it lacked, even for a Harley Quinn movie, it didn't quite work. Now, to be clear here, Harley Quinn does wear roller skates, but she was in a roller derby in the early part of in the first act of the movie. It shows her in a roller derby, and that's where she makes a lot of her enemies, by the way, because she's a very good roller derby. So Harley Quinn knows about roller skates, and even all her little pop characters, a lot of them have rollerblades on them, and she wears rollerblades quite a bit in the Jimmy Palmiotti Man of Connor series. So don't get me wrong, the fact that Harley Quinn wears roller skates is common, and I'm glad it's in the movie. but the manner in which they introduced her having those roller skates, it came out of the blue in the movie, and it didn't feel natural, and it could have felt natural because there could have been 1,000 different ways they could have incorporated it in the early part of the movie, moving into that third act. Again, that's a nitpick though, but overall it wasn't bad. And now, having said that, the fight scenes in the carnival weren't that good. Black Canary is probably the best, had some of the best fight scenes, second to Harley Quinn. But they could have been better had it been better choreographed in that third act, in that carnival. It never worked. I didn't like them being in a carnival setting. It looked just too stupid. It looked like they were in, it just didn't, I didn't buy it. I got cringe-inducing vibes that I got from Batman and Robin, the George Clooney show with the fighting Mr. Freeze and what looked like an over-the-top crazy movie set that had that feel at times, and it didn't work. It didn't work. And so the third act, it does fall apart for me. But at the end, when Harley Quinn does end up confronting, her and Cassandra Cain end up confronting Black Mask at the Gotham dock, the Gotham pier, and they, of course, end up, he gets his comeuppance, to say the very least. And, yeah, it was okay. Now, other criticisms of this movie, and again, these are minor nitpicks, and some of them might seem a little bit unfair to some of you, but I'm going to say them anyway. I think Cassandra Cain was miscast for this movie. Cassandra Cain is Asian and Korean she's an Asian character in the comic books, or at least she was originally. They've Caucasianized her. DC has been a mess lately for some reason currently in DC Comics. Cassandra Cain is wrongly drawn as a Caucasian and look Caucasian. She's not. She's actually Asian, or at least she was when she first came out in No Man's Land. So they picked the right. The actor who plays Cassandra Cain is I never even wrote down the character's name. The actress that plays her name. Just give me a minute here. It's Ella J. Basco. Ella J. Basco. She's a young actress. She does a serviceable job. But if I'm honest with you, I got vibes of Anakin Skywalker. Okay? It didn't work. In fact, when the third act begins to slow down in this movie, there was a decided shift in the tone and in the speed of which the movie was moving. It had a nice pace. The pacing of the movie came almost to a dead stop, and I could tell you almost exactly the scene when it happened. It was when Cassandra Cain and Harley Quinn were alone in Harley Quinn's apartment, and they were talking, and Harley Quinn and her had a conversation that was completely pointless and served no narrative purpose in the movie. And you really saw how bad an actress Cassandra Cain was, the actress that played her. It didn't work. It really didn't work. Cassandra Cain in this movie was better when she was a pickpocket and didn't say much and just had to mumble a few words. So that hurt the movie, I'm not going to lie. It slowed down the movie, and I didn't quite buy it. And again, that's harsh. And I know what happened to the guy who played Anakin Skywalker. He grew up, and I think he's in a mental institution now, and he hasn't had bad luck. So I give constructive criticism. I'm sure the young actress who plays Cassandra Cain, I'm sure she'll improve. But this was a missed up. This was not a well acted performance by her. But again, it was serviceable. It worked. Again, I'm going to say again, to the extent it didn't, the scenes were less whenever she had to open her mouth. I'm sorry. It just was. Plus, making her look, her being a pickpocket, I didn't really buy her as a pickpocket. Didn't seem to work. And she really suffered in the wardrobe department. Her clothing was awful. Again, she by far lost she definitely was in the back of the line when they were, and I realize she's basically a homeless pickpocket. But again, I was really hoping for something different. Some hints that Cassandra Cain in the comic books is such a demonstrably better written character, you have no idea. You could have easily made Cassandra Cain in this movie be a former, be the daughter of a yakuza mafia. You already had mafia in the movie already. Why not have her be the daughter of a mafia figure, hiding alone in the streets of New York City, pickpocketing, using her skills as a martial artist and as a young up and coming assassin? You could have done that, and you could have given her and kept her silent. Because Cassandra Cain, initially when she came out, she speaks the language of motion. She doesn't speak very well. You could have really put some creativity in that, and that would have built some rapport between her and Huntress, which could have been built upon, if not in this movie, in future movies. As it stands now, Cassandra Cain is a character that I don't want to ever see again. I don't, and unfortunately, this movie ends with Cassandra Cain basically being the sidekick to Harley, and you really couldn't have picked a worse character for it, because this is, if you're gonna have a sidekick for Harley, create a new character. Don't use Cassandra Cain, because it's not beholden to the comic books on any level, and it's just a missed opportunity by Warner Brothers to really build up how interesting Cassandra Cain is in the comic books, because this Cassandra Cain, I gotta tell you, was probably one of the was the weakest part of this entire movie, and it just never worked. And I say that with trepidation because I don't like picking on the young, but I'm criticizing the character, the use of the character and the interpretation of the character does not work in this movie, and to the extent that it does, it's poorly acted, and that's just how I feel. Overall, though, guys, I do recommend that people go see this movie. It's worth seeing. There's some laugh out loud moments. There's some great action scenes. And again, you got Margot Robbie. You got some beautiful women here in the lead roles here. This is good stuff. At a minimum, while this isn't going to make your top 10 list, you're not going to be woke up from anything. You're just going to enjoy the show for what it is. And I'm sure this is going to be at least in your top 25 list for superhero movies. It's worth seeing. I hope there's a sequel coming out. And again, it's great to see a shout out to Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor in the credits of this movie. And also there was a shout out to Chuck Dixon in this movie as the creator, which is great. And you don't always see that because Chuck Dixon is very much in conservative circles. He doesn't always get the recognition he deserves in this politically PC culture. Okay, but in any event, guys, tell me what you think of Harley Quinn, the Fantabulous Emancipation of One. I said that wrong. Tell me what you think of Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Good Lord. Long title. Hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at Metropolis40. And until next time, Comic Boom out.